Hello, and welcome to the Unconventional Path, Entrepreneurship and Innovation Stories and Ideas. I'm Bela and Mike.
And I'm Mike Wasserman.
Today's guest on the podcast is Anish Majumdar. He is an expert in the hidden job market. He also has a YouTube channel called Hello Anish.
Bela, I was thinking, honestly, when you told me about this, okay, another career coach, okay, skeptical, all right? But I trust you. And then when I read Anish's bio, I got really curious about his approach. So I'm really interested to hear your conversation. Let's get right to it.
Sounds good, Mike. Hi, Anish. Welcome to the podcast.
How are you, Bela? Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, sure. Thanks for being on. So let me ask you a question. If you're at a social event, a non-work related social event, and you get introduced to somebody, and after the introduction, they say to you, "Oh, very nice to meet you, Anish. What do you do?"
Yes.
How do you answer that question?
This is one that I've struggled with and have gotten borderline panicky about answering. Sometimes I've even had to borderline leave a place because I've answered so badly. What I would do today is I would answer that question through the prism of not what jobs I want or what my current title is or anything like that. I would frame it a little bit like Luke Skywalker in terms of a mission. And it can be anything. When you look at our journey and you look at what we do, there's a lot of ways to phrase it. But the best way to get that kind of initial traction with someone, which means that you get their defenses to lower and you get a degree of openness and interest and commonality. The best way to do that really is in some sense to show them a little bit of what you as a man have experienced and what as a human being is driving the changes you are wanting to make, of which the next job or the current job or whatever, right, is one manifestation of that, right? If you can get some agreement in terms of that, right? In other words, if I didn't waste your time talking about, oh, look at our services and programs and all this, but if I just, took a second to hopefully, connect with you and let you know, like, I know I've been out there, I know how hard it can be and how alone you can feel. And I promise you what I've discovered is that has nothing to do with your value. It has everything to do with, this other stuff that's there. If I can get you agreeing there, we have so much room in terms of where we can explore and where we can go, So the Luke Skywalker is what I would say is where's your Luke Skywalker right now? Would be a question I'd ask.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons I ask that, because I always think that the responses I get are very interesting. And you gave a great one in that this is about connecting and it's not about selling.
Yes. I think one of the hardest things about, if we want to call it selling or influencing or relationship building, is actually fighting that voice inside of us that never stops saying, look, well, because there's self-interest or that there could be self-interest at some point, that delegitimizes the worth of what this interaction is and what's going on there. And what I found is the deepest selling, the best selling I've ever done have come from places where it's like at a certain point, it's like, dude, I don't even care if you work with me or not. I want to see you make a change here, okay? I would like to see you make a change. I'm open to you making a change, and I'm willing to help, and when you fall in love with the challenges and you can go enough down to a path where people can feel like, okay, you're a legitimate good actor here who is wanting to do this for some reasons beyond self-interest. Yeah, that's when incredible things are open. So much of this has to do with making people feel comfortable first, and when we rush past that, and I do that too, but when we rush past that, that's when we pay this kind of price in some sense of, yep, people will they might keep talking with you, but it's like you can tell like there's still a little bit like this, like, okay, what the hell's going on here? Right. The trust isn't there yet. The warmth isn't there yet. Hopefully, Yeah.
So let's zoom in a little bit. Let's talk about your business and what your business does.
I'm a career coach. I've been one for a little over 12 years. In that time, I've had the chance to work with a few thousand people, and our focus is pretty simple. It's to bring you into a wider flow of opportunities for yourself and offers for yourself, and hopefully doing it in a way that doesn't kind of make you feel like you're this cog in a wheel who has to basically be forced to taking it. A big aha moment I had, when I started working in the industry was realizing that, we all tell ourselves, I accepted this role, I accepted this role. But the truth is, if we're being brutally honest, rare are the cases that you chose it, because choosing would mean you have multiple offers. Choosing would mean it's easy for you to get them. Most of us, we were like, okay, thank the Lord, I got something. Okay, great, I got it, And so the lack of that choice, the knowledge from job to job to job, that even though your titles might increase, maybe what you make increases, but to know that in real terms, your freedom of choice does not increase. And in many cases, when you go up like this, that's when you actually will find more resistance in traditional hiring. That's the thing that almost killed me professionally. And that's the thing that, our whole focus is on guiding people into a way to say, hey, look, you don't have to be worried about networking. You don't have to be worried about building relationships. And if there's a way that you can do this safely, there's a way that you can, in some sense, have your cake and eat it too. You can get to where you want faster, and you can do it without, maybe we've all done this, looking at a computer screen, feeling like my eyeballs are going to burn out of my sockets because I'm looking at the same job posting for the 15th time in a row. And I'm like, what am I going to do, man? I got auto rejected from this 5 days ago. Like, so is this the end all? So that's our focus is gently pulling people into a place of greater abundance, hopefully.
So what are some of the things that I can do, or you can help me do, to sort of increase my number of choices?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one thing that I'll see a lot when I look at people's brands, by which I mean their LinkedIn profiles, the things that they're putting out there. A common problem I'll see is that people will either associate themselves with, they'll skills trade. So they'll say, look, I deserve to be a CTO because I've got X number of years and look at all this tech skills that I have, right? Or what they'll do is they'll say, look, I was a part of X company and Y company. Let me advertise those, and you should trust me because of that. Neither of those really work, right? And so what would work much, much better is, again, to ask yourself, taking this sort of Luke Skywalker way of thinking, what's a process that I could align to, right? If you were truly a partner to a business, let's say the one of 5 or 6, it actually wouldn't matter if you got there because of technology or not. Like a real CTO, like I've worked with CTOs, with IT managers, and we're looking at their branding and resume. An IT manager could have a 3 or 4 page resume, right? A CTO of a Fortune 500 company could have a 1-page resume that barely mentions tech, because you didn't get there, and we're not looking for you there because of your skills. We're looking for you there as a partner to the business, right? And what you do and how you do it and what your focus is, that's your magic, right? So if you were to, anyone could do this. If you were to start looking at competitors who are, let's say, 3 to 4 levels up, clearly in the zone of your intimidation, look at that top 3 or 5% of the results that you see, and pay attention to those people who are branding around something that they believe in, branding around an outcome, okay? What you're going to find when you study them, right, is you're going to find that it results in a far more powerful brand. It results in a brand that allows you to engage. And most importantly, it fosters a greater degree of trust. Because when we look at it from the other side, the number one thing that is driving away employers, all these people who are actively hiring right now, is like, dude, I want to reach out to Bela, but I'm looking at his profile. I'm not sure that he knows what he wants. And if I chat with him, I don't want to have a conversation where it's like, what are you open to? I'm open to everything. What roles are you open to? Absolutely everything. It's like, no. I would like some degree of differentiation there,
Sure.
That's what offers trust. And you don't have to get agreement with someone in order for them to do business with you. Like most of the people I work with, they've come in. I've worked with people who have said, look, Anish, my wife it forced me to work with you because as I've been trying to solve it, I've totally failed. Okay. And I'm like, fine, you don't have to believe me, right? Trust can happen and business can happen without me and you being perfectly aligned on personality or process or anything. Trust comes from a deeper place, right? So that is something anyone can do. And maybe another thing that I would suggest is when it comes to an interview, or when it comes to meeting someone high level for the first time, in some sense, your goal should be the same. It's not to impress. What are you impressing? You don't know. It's really the same. What is if there's a hire, like if you're there, to interview, your job is to identify what is really going on. Assume the job posting is not telling you anything Real.
Yeah.
Your job is to find those 2 or 3 elements. In other words, you should be asking questions more than you're answering. You should be spending most of the time listening, and you should be spending most of your time, in some sense, putting the details together, right? The same thing is true if you're meeting the CEO of a company. Your job is not to impress, and your job is not to pretend that you're like them. I've had such a weird, atypical background as an actor, a journalist, and all this. I'm never fooling anyone that I'm there, but that's okay, right? Because where the value comes from is like when someone like me and you, when we have the ability to, in some sense, with respect, hold up a mirror in terms of what you're experiencing, what I'm experiencing. And if I say, look, for whatever the time period I have here, here's my commitment to you. Let me just see if I can help. Like, no strings attached. I'm lucky enough that I'm in a position in my life that I can do that, right?
Yeah.
Magic happens there. And same thing in an interview. When you have someone who you can tell isn't just going to slide a resume over there, but is like, man, I'm so happy that we're having a chance to talk because I know you've been at this company for 6 years, right? Can we start by having a little conversation in terms of what you've experienced here? Woo! It changes the whole dynamic.
Right.
It changes the whole energy there into something much, much more conducive, and something that will almost without exception result in something better for you, regardless of where, of where you go. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Excellent. So let me flip this a little bit.
Yeah.
So many of our listeners are entrepreneurs who
Yes.
have started small businesses. So they're sitting on the other side of the table, right?
Yep.
They're looking for talent. They're looking for people who will help them move their business forward.
Yep.
So what are things that they can do, or what are things that they should look for as they think about having conversations with potential new hires?
I think I love that question. I think, and it makes me also think about some of the hiring experiences I've had, in building this company. Never thought, probably like most entrepreneurs, or maybe I never thought I would be in a position to hire people until there was a gun to my head and I had to figure it out. I used to make, and I still do, I make this mistake of overemphasizing skill sets and quote unquote traditional qualifications, because
Yes.
in some sense, it makes me feel safer about the hire, and it makes me feel safer that, okay, if they have the traditional background, that's what's gonna work. And forgetting the fact that for me, I never, this is all, against plan. Nowadays, what I look for specifically, I'm looking for someone who has an ability to look at what we're dealing with. And part of the reason I'm looking to hire is that I'm unable to look at the problems here in anything beyond the lens of what it is. That's one of the factors. So if I have someone, I'm thinking of our last hire, who could look at these problems and say, okay, yes, you have a problem with intake. Yes, you have a problem with onboarding and all that. But here's what I see, okay? Here's what I understand your vision to be in terms of what's there. Here's what I would like to do, okay? Not just in terms of solving this, but with your buy-in, I'd like to start solving this in a way that results in a kind of company that I think is more in lines with what you want, right? That you ultimately didn't want to, start this to be putting out fires and putting out client fires. You did it to feel that excitement with someone when they're like, Anish, I freaking did it. I stood up for someone and I freaking got it. Or I'm able to afford a different kind of college for my son, right? That's what you want to focus on. That's what I want to be able to deliver here. And it changed the way I looked at that role from a sales professional to be like, maybe I need someone who can actually just run that whole thing as almost like a separate side of this business, like, because I realized that I was so tired in that moment. I was so tired of like having to pretend that I'm an expert in this and I'm an expert in this and this and this. I wasn't, and it gave me a breathing room in my mind in some sense to say, okay, like, yes, we can do this. And this happens, this happens all the time. Like, in terms of, quote unquote, talking people into roles and all that, I'm convinced that you never really talk people into it. But what you can do is you can say, like, look, at this stage in your life or at this stage in your company, right? Let's really respect where you guys are at, and let's respect the level of the challenge that's here. And let's structure this in a way that's going to be maximally conducive to getting you the result that you want, right? That vision piece, that's the thing where it, if you're talking at the very end, or if you're talking even the beginning, that tends to be the differentiator, because you can hang up the phone there and you can talk to other people and all this, but you're like, man, I'm not really sure when am I going to find another person who has that kind of skill set who even cares enough to
Sure.
look at it in that way. That vision piece to me communicates a lot. And the skill set, it's astonishing how much can be trained after the fact if you feel like there's a degree of trust there, and there's a degree of buy-in there. I'll break my back for the people that are in my team if I feel like, there's that sense, because there's something
Sure.
deep in me to, that I don't want to let them down either, and that tends to be a pretty good place to hire from, if you're getting some of that energy.
I remember listening to an interview with a CEO of a large company, and it was actually Herb Kelleher of Southwest, right? The founder of Southwest, a legendary, leader and manager. And someone was asking them, what do you look for when you hire people? And Herb said, I look for attitude. And if we have a good match on attitude, I can train you to do any job in Southwest Airlines, from flying an airplane to, checking baggage to anything. Doesn't matter.
Yes.
We can train you those skills if you have the right attitude.
Yes. So
my question is, whether you're a potential employee, you're looking for a position or a job, or you're looking to hire someone, oftentimes we think very narrow. I need an accountant.
Yes.
I need a person to do this very narrow, specific thing.
Yes.
How can I take a step back, whether I'm on either side of that conversation, right? Whether I'm an accountant saying, I'm an accountant, that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
How can I take a step back to kind of have this broader view, so that I have this, I'll use the word bond, between these two individuals, that then, know that we can accomplish something that's greater than just hiring an accountant or me just being an accountant?
That's a very powerful thing that you're touching on there. And to me, and in the work that I've seen, a big part of it comes from right when in the interaction and right when in all of this, you're getting the most feedback coming in to make it about yourself and go into that I thing. That's when really, the process, and it's slow, but we can all do it, and it has massive, results. To start the process of training yourself to, in some sense, act as if. In other words, like, what if what I'm hearing here is not the words of someone I'm building a relationship with? What if it was me, right? I mean, we all are in some sense making it up as we go along. We're all dealing with these pressures, right? So where I find where we're hesitant is we say to ourselves, look, if I think like a CEO, right? I'm not a CEO, but I'm meeting this person. If I dare to look at it through this person's point of view, they're going to judge me for, hey, what do you know about it? And you don't have that. But what I found is exactly the opposite. Like, what most people need, especially at the beginning, is for you to send out the signal to say, hey, I'm willing to look at this, or to try to look at this through your lens, right? And so I will try to remind myself, like, for the purposes of what we're talking about, let me think like a partner to this business. My own accountant, which is a great example, by the way, my own accountant, I hate it. I that part of my brain, like, it's just very, very difficult. That's when I got to call in my wife usually in terms of handling our stuff. So that is definitely the way that I see it. But she absolutely embodies that, because she understood, right? She works with other entrepreneurs and all that. She understood that what I really need is not just someone to put out these fires, right? But what I actually need is someone who's going to enable me to do what I do, bring more pleasure to it, and take the weight off, right? So the thing that got her the role was she, in some sense, took on a greater sense of responsibility for what she was identifying beyond the problems I came to the door with, right? Mm-hmm. And when I met resistance, right, rather than advocating as an accountant, right, she was advocating through the lens of, like, okay, tell me I'm wrong, and I might be wrong. That's never hurts to say that. But here's what I see. And in working with professionals at your level, and also working with professionals at a little bit of a higher level, right? This is what I see happen, right? In the larger context, right? And maybe you disagree with me right now on the specifics. Okay. Do you agree with me on the broad? Do you agree with me in terms of the overall? Because if you do, I'm interested in looking at this further. I'm interested in seeing if we can actually fix this. And I believe that we can. I know that we can, right? And so when I was able to, right at that beginning, say, okay, you know what? I trust you enough to know that you're keeping that big picture.
Yeah.
All of my micromanagey tendencies and all of this, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
she's telling me that she's like, judge me based on the ultimate thing. And from now on, like, we've been working successfully for year 4 we're going on. And it's exactly like that, where I'm like, oh man, Sarah, I'm so sorry to be running this thing by you. I don't know what the heck this is. And she's like, okay, Anish, fine. I'm going to take care of this. No problem. But here's what I want you and Pat to do 3 months down the line, because we want to make sure that this doesn't happen next year. We want to make sure that that's there. Are you cool with that? I'm like, hey, cool. Fantastic. I love it. I don't know if there's a part of me that's kind of sadomasochistic, but I love, as an entrepreneur, I love it when someone can say, hey, nope, you don't have to worry about that. You focus on that. I got you covered there. Do what you need to do, right?
Yeah.
And again, like you said, that attitude, a lot of it, I think, attitude counts for a lot because it's hard earned, and when it takes a lot of soul searching sometimes in these moments. And some of the highest performers I've ever worked with, it might shock you to know that they're the ones who tend to be the absolute most brutal on themselves. And that's true for some of the most successful entrepreneurs I've ever known. Like, when you hear their internal dialogue, something about the magic of what made them successful at their work, this is also something you have to be very careful of when you're in transition in any kind of profession, because that same beast can turn on you and say, that's not up to my level. That's not up to your standard, right? You gotta forgive yourself, and you've got to remind yourself, all of this, all hiring, all opportunity generation is a stumbling mess of flawed people doing their best that they can. But somehow we found our way, like somehow we find, these magical ways of connection,
right,
and impact, and that's what I try to remember, especially when I'm in the dark, myself, and trying to figure this kind of stuff out. Yeah.
Sure. So one of the things I heard you say there is that one of the things we should be looking for is not only a person who can take the problem that they're presented today, and solve and figure out, but also be able to look at that, and either they can put in place or they can help you put in place things to prevent that problem from occurring again in the future.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say, just to stack just a little bit on that, what tends to also help all of that stuff really land is to fight the urge inside of yourself. Once you're understanding what's going on, fight the urge inside of yourself to say, okay, I can help you here, and I can help you in this. You want to avoid this urge that we all have to pitch, present, and sort of do it. Be a bulldog about what you've identified, because what I found is that we all overestimate how much pain people and companies need to be in, and what we underestimate is someone who's like, listen to me. What you're talking about here, I get it. Like, you laying off 30% of your workforce, I get that that's the thing that keeps you up at night. I get that that's a priority. I will do everything possible professionally to make sure that doesn't work. Sometimes you just need someone who keeps beating, in some sense, the same drum that says, listen, this problem is solvable. We can do it. I want to make sure, and I want to partner with you. These are the rules of engagement in terms of the best way to do it. All learned, by the way. This might shock you, but I'm deeply introverted, and we used to have, and continue to have sometimes, real problems jumping on the phone, building relationships from scratch. But time and time again, what I found is that if I can take those extra steps to make someone feel comfortable to look at things through their shoes, and yes, challenge them when I'm hearing obvious BS, to actually say, hey, I care enough about you not to sit here for 15 minutes and tell me that and that makes sense. No, it doesn't. These things, there's a magic there, and people in general are actually so receptive, but we're all missing those 2 or 3 little things, someone who could just hold us by the hand a little bit and say, hey, it's cool, it's all right, the problems that you're experiencing, it's all good, it's normal, but let's talk about this, and let's really start the business of helping each other instead of just waiting for permission to help each other.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. So let me ask you another question. The landscape for finding people, or for people finding opportunities, has really changed, right? 15 years ago, it was monster.com, and that was it. That was the one big place to go looking for jobs online. And now it's like, there's just so many places. And, I reflect back on my own career, and I've had, I don't know, something like 11 or 12 different jobs. And only one of them I got from answering a classified ad. I answered a lot of classified ads, don't get me wrong, but only one of those 12 jobs came that way. All the other ones came through some other different route. So what sort of advice do you have for, again, either on the entrepreneur side, someone who's looking to hire, or for someone who is in the job market to expand their horizons? Where should they be looking? What should they be doing?
I do agree with you that in the time since you were experiencing that, and now there has been a lot of what looks from the outside, a lot of fracturing that's going on from an employer and a hiring perspective. Without a doubt, what we've seen as a trend in the last couple of years is a progressive de-resourcing of traditional, so in other words, if I'm a big company, what we're seeing over and over again is they're pulling resources that would have gone towards hiring external recruiters to say, hey, these are our recruiters, and because of the diminishing returns in terms of the quality of the hire as well as the retention and all that, what we're seeing is they're pulling that resource, and these resources aren't just being absorbed. What they're doing is they're pushing it out in terms of incentives, bonuses, things that will allow their existing workforce to do some of this work in some sense, right? Of pooling and bringing in quality people who can then therefore bypass a lot of the pain, bypass a lot of the cost expenditures, and hopefully the theory is bring in a higher quality of hire. So what that means for us, right, as individuals is to understand that in a very real sense, to tap into the 9x or 10x of opportunities that you're not going to see in those job boards is going to mean a deep investment and reinvestment in people and relationships, and specifically, to avoid a pitfall here, not talking with people who you're thinking of right now as a boss. Like, for example, I'm in IT. Who's the highest person in IT I can speak with? Think of it in terms of reverse the pain that you solve, right? So if I solve growth through a customer-driven approach that has marketing, analytics, okay, fine. It's not just the chief growth officer or the CEO. Operations, people, HR, all of these people actually are directly influenced by some aspect of what you solve. Those people, right, at the organizations, industries that you're interested in, if you can start systematizing an approach, it's a big focus of what we do, but if you can start systematizing an approach where, in addition to what you're already doing, right, let's say 10% of your day, okay, max, okay, we devote it towards this aspect of just getting this secondary channel, if you will, up and running for you, getting you more comfortable. A way to visualize it: you got all these potential opportunities and offers, okay? The stuff at the job posting end, the reason that it doesn't work that way is because there's a lot of problems with it. It's an old opportunity, they've tried to fix it, etc. But if that's only one little part of the funnel, right? All of this can be accessed through people, right? And so if you can start the process of fumbling, as we all have, but stumbling and realizing, hey, it's all right, we can do this, I can build. Dare I say it, you even have a right to build relationships with other people, which I took me many years to get to that point. Like, it's okay to meet people. Like, I get all this. Like, when you do that, then you start seeing this constellation of stuff, right? Some of which you'll want to solve now, some of which you'll not. But all of these people you're helping, right? And that's how you can start this process of sort of delinking your career prospects from just like the next job. And you can get yourself into a zone where we think of it like a universe, wherever you're at, fine. I still want it to be easy for you. And I always want you to have a couple of things that you're looking at, no matter how, Bela, no matter how secure you are professionally, ideally, okay, as someone who would want your best interests at heart, I would always want you to, even if it's like have 5% of your eye or 10% of your eye, I would want you to know that, if only to be reminded of the fact that, wow, man, my market worth has gone up crazy, and it's at least something to consider. No, it's at least something that makes me feel like I don't have to make these decisions from, with my back up against the wall. So yeah.
Excellent. So I want to switch gears a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Let's talk about why you started the business? Why did you, let's talk about the entrepreneur in you, right? You started your own business,
Mhm.
you've grown it, you've been successful. So talk a little bit about that process, the thinking that went into that.
I think, that the journey I have, I think might be a little bit of an example of like smashing your head against the wall past the point of no return and somehow finding out that there's another room on the other side. At least that's how it has felt to me. It was never part of the plan. I was, by heart and by nature, I consider myself, an artist. I was an actor for many years. Then I went into journalism, and basically working with job seekers started out as a sideline, because people started to realize like, hey, you know what? If I work with this person, like the way I'm being perceived is changing. Like these good things are happening for me professionally, right? So that's how I started doing it. And the aha moment I had was, I remember this guy Arthur called me up. It was supposed to be a client call, and he's like in his 50s, an architect in New York, and he just sort of breaks down, and what he confesses to me is that, I'm supposed to look for a job. I thought I was safe and secure here. They made all these promises to me. They reneged on all of that stuff. And so, you tell me what I'm going to do here, because I just feel so stupid, and I realized that there's a deeper problem here that goes beyond like what I was doing, which was resumes at the time and all this, that something fundamentally could change there. And perhaps it was an accident or something fortuitous, but up until that point, I'd spent my life trying to avoid traditional hiring as much as possible, and that meant auditioning and doing all this. So I knew that it was possible. As every writing assignment I'd ever gotten for magazines, and I'd won awards and stuff by that point, I'd gotten through pitching, building a relationship, whatever. So I knew it had to be possible, but it set me on this journey that almost bankrupted me. But it took about 5 or 6 years of not just coaching other people, but learning alongside other entrepreneurs, coaches, and really putting together a system that, works for people who would never consider themselves an entrepreneur ever. But but the truth is, in our year and where we are now, the safety comes from adopting some of that sense and understanding it's not about the size of who you are. You don't have to be a huge thought leader in anything, but you do have to know how to get it done, no matter how humble it is. You have to know how to get it done yourself, and you have to know how to do it in a way that isn't just reliant on the permission of other people, because you're going to be around forever, So that's where it began. I remember, along the way, massive, I'm just being, massive, struggles with depression, with financial hardship. We, me and my wife, we had to, at some point, we had to sell, jewelry that she got from my parents as part of a wedding gift, So we've, I still have the old beat to death Cadillac from 2003 Cadillac, which I will never sell, never. Okay. Because every time I look at that thing, I'm like, dude, this thing got us through a winter where like, it's like, we could not have repaired it. So every time I drop the kids off, I was more spiritual than I've ever been in my life. You understand? Like, it's like, dude, I am in. So, but, and this is, I think, the sweetness though of the entrepreneurial path. All the embarrassment, all the shame, all of this, all of that, it does convert, on the other side, because on the other side, you realize like the reason you're here now, and the reason I'm lucky enough to be able to talk to you now, among other things, is because I was so stupidly committed to this crazy idea that I just sort of kept walking. And as it turned out, there was a solution to it, but you just needed someone who was maybe that insane, who was maybe that this, to just keep doing it and just sort of not care, and so who knows what our limits are, right? Like, who knows like what we can do. But I love the fact, whenever anyone who starts something, anyone who says, dude, I'm putting myself out there, this to me, like, you're not going to regret as much as you fear that you are, because that's what puts the universe going like, okay, very good. Okay. Yeah. You're probably going to fail on this one, but I'm not going to make the landing so hard that you're not going to be able to pick yourself up. Now, you know something here, and I found myself falling in love with that. And I definitely fell in love with the small changes in terms of helping people, which was never a part of the plan, but it ended up being, the most satisfying thing I've ever experienced. Like these small little changes.
Yeah. One of the things I used to, when I was a professor, I used to teach entrepreneurship, and one of the couple of points I always tried to make with my class is that number one, entrepreneurship skills are valuable in any profession, in any part of your life.
Yes.
Number two, entrepreneurs rarely ask for permission.
Mm-hmm.
They don't ask permission. They just kind of go. And number three, if you think about it, everything we have in this world, everything is because someone was willing to try something new.
Yes.
Because that's definition of progress. You
Absolutely.
try something new.
Absolutely.
And 90% of times it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Right. But those 10% of times it does work are precious.
Yes.
So adapting that kind of mindset to say, hey, you know what? I don't need to ask for permission.
Yes.
And trying something new is fine. And I'm not failing. What I'm doing is I'm learning. If something doesn't, I try something and it doesn't work, then I had learned that.
But that is the literal truth, especially when you look at someone's journey over, like, let's say 20, 30, 40 years. It's like, I totally believe that, you're fail quickly and you're going to fail often, for sure. But understand that in the grand scheme of your journey, you might very well find a couple of years down the line that you can't really attach that word failure to it, because the insights that you got from that, the resiliency that you got from that, right? I thought I'd failed as an actor. I'd never reached the level that I wanted to. I never got the level that was there. But learning about people and learning, like, behaviorally, like in these high stress situations, how people function, how to stay in contact, how to build rapport. This is the stuff that, as a career coach, I was like, is anybody going to talk about, like, how human driven this stuff is? Like, and no one was, So it converted the way over time. I looked at that and I said, man, thank God I stumbled. Thank God I had some courage to put myself out there, because you gain uncommon knowledge and insight from taking uncommon action. And that's what success, that's what that catalyzed always is. So in some sense, does it matter whether it's catalyzed now? Yes, I would prefer it to be. But if it's not, understand there's going to be benefit from that, right? Gain atypical experiences and atypical exposure, because doing that is what's going to spark more of those moments where you're like, because a lot of times innovation isn't just the business of like bringing something completely new into the world. A lot of times the heart of innovation is just someone who cares enough or understands enough about a certain sector, a certain niche, to be able to say, hey, this works over here. Has anyone tried actually connecting the dots here and making that happen, right? So try not to make a long-term judgment on those mistakes, and because really a lot of times that's where the gold lies. That's where the value of what you do lies, that no one will ever be able to compete with, because they don't know how the hell you got it from. Like it came from the specifics of Bela's journey and his suffering that is so unique to him, right? That no one else can compete with. So it definitely changed the way I looked at it, because some of the highest things I held on to as successes, when I started seeing the impact on my family and all of this, I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe the goal for this next year shouldn't be $1 million. Maybe the goal should be to have a better relationship with my kids and a better, So I constantly find myself sort of like reevaluating what the criteria are in terms of what success is. And as I do that, the things in my life, right, that I initially termed as a failure, I can look at through a slightly older lens, and I'm like, you know what? Good on you, dude. Good on you for doing that. You know what I mean? Right. And I would imagine in your life, you've had so many diverse experiences. I bet you aren't there so many risks that you've taken that now there's a slightly kinder look to it. You know what I mean? You're like, all right, like, yeah, like, absolutely, it was all right. Absolutely. I try to remind myself of that, because I also find that people on the entrepreneurial path, we can be like devastatingly hard on ourselves. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah.
And so much harder oftentimes, I find, than, I work with professionals who are like, yeah, that didn't work. This didn't work. This, that. I haven't met many entrepreneurs who are like, yeah, this is my life's work. This is like the thing I'm risking, That's fine. I screwed it up. It's no big deal, like, so you gotta give it up to people on the path, regardless of where you're at right now.
Yeah. Very good. So, Anish, if people want to learn more about you, your business, where do they go?
If you go to helloanish.com, that is kind of our like HQ. You can go deeper into the trainings. It's all free and all this. I would also direct people who, if you wanted to go over there, there's also a masterclass you can take that if you want to learn our strategy. We've had thousands of people take it. Many people who we've never worked with who've gone on to use our training. We want you to use it. You can find all of that there. The other option, I think, if you're interested, would be if you're on LinkedIn. If you put in Anish, A-N-I-S-H, career, you should probably see my face there. I'm trying my best to share details, wins from people who are actually in the trenches there, just to, again, change this discussion a little bit in terms of how we go about succeeding and how we go about kind of generating this. So to anyone who's out there, fighting off the demons of scarcity while running towards abundance, those would be two very good places.
Great. I will make sure they're in the show notes so people can find them there. Absolutely. And so my last question, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I have a little Post-it note here that has helped me immeasurably that I was thinking of before, our conversation. And it simply says, remember that everyone is a mess and you are also a mess. And I would remind all of us, on this journey here, the ups and downs and the feeling of being intimidated whenever you're taking a new step, that's always going to be there. But I really, really want to remind you, all of us, we are all doing the best that we can. We're all struggling, succeeding, and the humanity that you have, even your doubts, don't be afraid to bring that into the room. Don't be afraid to bring your whole self into there, because I think you're going to find far more allies than enemies. You're not going to. It's hard to judge someone who is already coming to you and saying, "Hey, you know what? Like, here we go, man. Open book. You know what I mean? No limit. Right. Oh yeah, that was a problem. Or, oh yeah, you know what? I wish I'd done that a different way. Or, maybe I missed you there. That's one of the most powerful things you can do. If you're dialoguing with someone and you actually missed picking up on something, to just say, hey, oh man, I missed you there, didn't I? Because it shocks people, because it's like, oh my God, you're not trying to be perfect. I'm not perfect. Don't worry, and that's okay too. Hopefully that's helpful. I always try to remember that, there is no perfection. We're flawed here, and that's all right.
Yeah. Those are great closing comments. Anish, thank you very much for being a guest on the podcast. You were wonderful.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate the energy, and I thank you for making the journey, especially on the entrepreneurial path, that much easier. We need a couple of bright lights out there to illuminate the darkness. So I'm very thankful for you and what you're putting out.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks again.
Okay, Bela, you were right, and that was a really interesting interview. I thought Anish was a really thoughtful and interesting person, and I learned a lot from the conversation. What were your major takeaways?
Yeah, so I think I learned some stuff here too, and I think that the biggest takeaway for me was this notion about branding yourself. Right, we sort of brand ourselves now with LinkedIn and these other sort of vehicles we use in our resume. So brand yourself around outcome and what you want to do and accomplish, and not necessarily like most of us do, which is brand yourself around who you worked for, right, and what your title was. So this notion of what you're trying to accomplish. And think of it as a partnership with the corporation you're thinking of joining, or whatever endeavor, organization you're thinking of joining, and what things can you bring to the table to accomplish and move together on, as opposed to, well, I worked at IBM, I worked at GE, and these were my titles, which that looks just like everyone else's LinkedIn page. So I thought, to me, that was the biggest takeaway. What were your thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you just said. In general, I loved his insights about how entrepreneurs should hire people. And I liked how he talked about building conversations and getting comfortable with people and really trying to make a connection, rather than kind of the standard approach to getting a job. That, when you have a conversation, you really learn about people and you start to figure out what might be possible. And, there are, like you said, different ways to fill positions, and you have to use multiple ways usually and find the right way that fits your organization. But I thought that was really a super way to look at the whole hiring process. And again, something that I've heard a lot of career coaches and people give advice, but this was kind of unique to me. What was your sense?
So the other thing that I thought was kind of neat was he talked a lot about trust. and this notion of building trust. And once you build trust, that's when that action can take place of, okay, I'm going to hire you, or you're going to hire me, or whatever, right? And I thought about that. I said, I think I've had like 12 different jobs in my career, and all of them except for one, I got via a relationship that I had with someone. I knew somebody, they knew me, somebody recommended me, etc. Only one of them I got from the, send out your resume to a job ad. And I sent out a lot of resumes to a lot of job ads, but I never got anything from them, just 1 out of 12. And the other 11 I got because either I already knew that person and I met that person somehow, or I got introduced to that person or recommended to that person, or our paths crossed somehow, or someone in our circles paths crossed somehow. And then as I thought about when Anish was saying about trust, that's exactly what that is, right? So if you recommend somebody to Mike, they come with a already pre-established level of trust because I trust you. I've known you for a long time. So that puts that person at the top of the stack. So I think you got to think about what are ways that you can build trust. One is the way I just sort of talked about, is your network and reaching out to it in a serious way, not in a superficial way, right? These superficial relationships that various social media and places allow us to have, those are meaningless, right? But yeah, you have to develop meaningful relationships with folks. And I think the other way you can do this is that you can become an authority in your space, and with all of these various different outlets, you can become an authority by writing articles, by writing a blog, by being on podcasts, there's this opportunity to do that stuff. And I can remember when we were, one of the companies I was in was a medical surgical company, and we had a PR firm that worked with us that helped us get articles written about us in the New York Times, Newsweek, and various different, trade outlets. Because when somebody reads an article about you that's written by someone else, again, the trust level goes up, as opposed to reading an advertisement that we spent the same amount of money on to print in some journal or some magazine or something. So it all goes back to, I think, of establishing your authority, establishing your expertise, and trust. Those things are all linked, and these are various different ways of doing it.
Totally agree. So yeah, you have to have a strategy. That was pretty clear. And then I think you have to do things that engender trust, which is go out of your way to help people and to be kind, right? So there's two things. You have to have the expertise, right, and then you have to be willing to share. You have to, when you promise something, you follow through. So there's this behavioral element too of, I know Bela. He's a good person, right? I've seen how he helped this one person, or I saw how he's worked with these different organizations, and this is a person that I've seen that has a lot of credibility from the human standpoint. So the best situation, you have the best of both worlds. You've got this technical knowledge, but then you've also got this something about your person, right? That leads to say, yes, I will put some faith in this person, that they will do what they say they do, or they will add value. So I like looking at it from both sides. And then the conversation that Anish talked about, that's the way you communicate that, right? That I'm this combination of a good skill and good people, right? And I'm going to help your organization.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's interesting.
Very good.
I loved how he defined his own entrepreneurial journey, right? This idea of, talking about the shame and the doubts that he had when he was struggling. We've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think everybody's gone through this, but he really expressed it in a very clear way. And then the feeling of succeeding, right? This whole big ups and big downs. I mean, I think we've both had this, and he explained it really clearly. This idea of taking a lot of risk to find unconventional knowledge, I think was how he said it. The ability to become difficult to imitate, right? You take risks to become unconventional. And when you get some knowledge that's unique and special, that makes it difficult for others to imitate you. And I loved his description of that process. It all resonated a lot with me and in the businesses that I tried to help build, and in my own career. So, really some neat stuff there. Last thoughts from your side.
No, that was well said, Mike. I don't think I have anything to add. I think we should wrap this one up.
All right, let's do it. Listeners, thanks for joining us today. We hope you found this episode interesting and thought-provoking. As always, if you have questions about what we discussed, please feel free to get in touch with us. Our email is bela.and.mike@gmail.com.
Hey, and please do follow the podcast if you haven't already. So until next time, signing off from upstate New York. See you soon, Mike.
That's great, Bela, and from over here in Münster, Germany. See you next time.